I will call this chapter The Economics of Being Poor. There's a different set of rules that exist for different financial classes of people. The rich have their own rules, the poor have theirs. The rules that exist for the poor are quite different. Namely, there is an economic system that tends to take every opportunity to extract as much as they can from poor people. And it does this in a number of ways. Firstly, let us describe the term poor. We can adequately describe poor as lacking sufficient income or assets to meet basic needs: food, shelter, clothing. It is mainly a short-term indicator of a lack of money needed to survive. And long-term, we would describe this as poverty, as falling below an economic threshold. The first way this occurs is quality. The poor cannot afford to buy nicer items like everyone else, so they tend to buy cheaper items that fit within their budget. The paradox of this is that the cheaper items will more than likely need to be purchased again and replaced sooner than a nicer object. And this brings to mind an old story about buying boots. A man could only afford cheap boots for $50, so he bought them, but he had to replace them yearly. Likewise, a man he worked with could afford $100 boots, but these boots would last for years and years, actually saving the other man money in the long run. Affordable shopping tends to yield cheaper, lower quality items. This is, of course, on purpose. These cheaper items will almost always have to be replaced soon, forcing more buying in the future. Along with this, cheaper items tend to have less quantity. When you buy from many retail stores, they tend to cut the quantity to lower amounts per cost, hoping most won't notice the smaller package. This is extremely different from wholesale, in which people who can afford to pay for more get far more with each purchase. Most poor people tend to not shop in wholesale, though. We can also look towards those dollar stores. You know the ones. Everything for $1, Dollar General. They pop up in poorer neighborhoods and seem like a convenient and cheap option to get necessities and other items. When looking at the items they sell, as well as the quantity and price at which they sell these items, they're often far more expensive per unit price overall. Namely, they sell you less item, but at a higher price, hoping you will enjoy the convenience of not having to drive across town to shop while ripping you off on a retail purchase. Another economic device is rent to own. These pesky shops rose up in the late 1960s and have plagued the poor ever since. They advertise that you can get quality items at low monthly costs. They will rent you a television for $30 a month and pay on it for 5 years. Seems affordable at first. When you actually do the math, people that rent to own these items will often pay many times the face value price of the item over years' time. A television that rents for $30 per month will end up costing someone thousands of dollars over the years instead of the several hundred it would cost them to buy it up front. All around, rent to own is akin to buying items at an insane interest rate that draws out far longer than the actual value of the item. The next way that the poor are taken advantage of is borrowing and credit. Not having funds available to make necessary purchases will lead many to turn to credit cards or financing purchases just to make it through. With any type of loan on a purchase, you are never just paying the cost of the item. You are now paying interest on top of the purchase price along with any fees. Typical credit cards will run with average interest rates of 24 to 32% interest. This means that if you carry a balance of $1,000 on a credit card for an entire year at an interest rate of 28%, you will be paying approximately $23 in interest every month along with the principal. Over a year's time, this could add up to almost $300 in interest simply on a $1,000 loan. Along with credit cards, various predatory lenders have popped up in the past 4 decades. Payday loan stores have somehow found their way into all types of indigent neighborhoods and prey on people who need quick money, but at exorbitant interest rates. If you were to go to a payday loan store and take out a $100 loan, say just to cover a bill for the month, even if you went back the next day to pay off this loan, you could literally pay twice the principal amount in payoff. While these lenders often cite loan interest rates of 35%, the APR is actually much higher. Avoid payday loans at all costs. I would like to introduce you to the concept of delayed gratification. This is an idea that many people embrace, but cannot fully utilize due to lack of patience, of self-control. Delayed gratification is putting off a purchase or an action to instead hopefully wait and build toward a better, more favorable event or purchase in the future. For instance, I have $20 today, and I would really like to buy a pair of shoes. Well, $20 won't get a great pair of shoes. It will buy me a cheap secondhand set of sneakers that may be worn, but it will give me something. Now, let's say I instead wait a week and save some more money. Now I have $60. Instead of buying the cheap shoes, I can instead wait and save more and get a better purchase in the future. By putting off buying what I want now and instead waiting to make a better purchase, I will end up being better off than simply succumbing to my current desires in the present moment. Unfortunately, this mindset is not universally held, and people will often make a bad purchase today on something they may not even need, but they could not wait to own the item. And this will almost always end up costing them more in the long run, as they could have waited and made a better quality purchase, but instead wanted to satiate current desires. This leads to the old adage, buy nice or you will buy it twice. Cheaper, low quality items will often not last as long and will need to be replaced much more quickly than a higher quality, well built item. If possible, displace your current desires and wait to buy the quality item that you need. Delay the gratification for a better future. Next, the ability to own versus utilizing perpetual subscription costs. There is a new protruding economic model of subscribing. Companies don't want you to own an actual product. They would rather rent it to you and you pay a monthly fee in perpetuity. Whether it is actually a subscription fee for a service or renting instead of owning, companies are able to extract constant resources from people by lending them a service or product. And there are various barriers to entry for ownership, and many people cannot afford the down payment on a home. For this reason, they instead rent. When this occurs, there is a transfer of money along with equity in a home. The tenant is the recipient of this equity, though. That goes to the landlord along with the rent. Finding yourself caught in the perpetual cycle of renting may be normal for many people, but it does lead to people exiting one lease and finding their way right back to another lease. If you own a home and are able to pay it off, your payments would eventually stop, minus property taxes, of course. But this is a relatively small amount compared to perpetual rent payments. The poor often find themselves caught up in these subscription models, constantly paying on things they will never own. Lastly, a final habit that afflicts the poor disproportionately is preventative versus reactive spending. The rich can often deal with issues as they arrive. Health issues, go get seen at the doctor. Dental issues, just pay to have it fixed now. Something broke at home. Oh well, we can just fix it. The poor, unfortunately, do not have this advantage. They often have to wait to fix things, and the downfall is that ailments tend to get worse over time. That cavity you couldn't pay to have fixed? Well, now it's a bad infection and the tooth is now rotten. The pain in your side you couldn't get seen by a doctor? Well, now it has gotten worse and will inevitably be more expensive to deal with. That leak in your roof that you couldn't fix? Well, now it has led to rotting wood and water damage. It is almost always cheaper to prevent issues than fix them later on. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Dealing with and fixing problems early is the way to go and is almost always more affordable. If you spot any of these tendencies in your life, try to find a solution to free yourself from these cycles. Avoid borrowing on credit cards. Don't rent to own anything. Instead, try to save up for it and buy it outright so that you don't finance the item for well over what it is worth. Never ever go to a payday loan store. They are absolute loan sharks, and they are not working in your interest. And if possible, always try to fix things as they arise. Fixing it early and taking care of things before they get worse can end up saving you a lot of money in the long run. For this reason, many financial experts recommend having an emergency fund of $1,000 set back for such situations. With an emergency fund, you can deal with problems as they arise, and you don't have to turn to credit cards to deal with them.